Hey there, welcome back to the Millennial Book Junkie. My name is Monique, your millennial host, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to talk about my September wrap-up. Now, believe me when I say, this was literally the best reading month I have ever had, okay? So far in my life, it has been the best reading month. I read 4 books and I gave them all 5 stars. Like, it was just such a great reading month. Like, when I think back on it, I'm just like, I wish I could have months like that all the time because this one was just so good. So I cannot wait to tell you about the books that I read this month. I hope you'll also bear with me. I'm recovering from a sickness, so I have brought my sparkling beverage, Recess. This video is not sponsored by Recess, but it should be. This is a very mood drink. Since I am a sober girly, I like to experiment with all the sparkling waters, especially the types that alter your mood a little bit in ways that are like basically making you relaxed. It's got magnesium and adaptogens. It's delicious. Not sponsored by Recess. Okay, let's talk about the books. I read 4 books total. They were all fiction, gave them all 5 stars, totaling 1,412 pages. Now, I have to tell you, this is like one of my best months ever, which I know I already told you, but 3 of the books were physical that I had, and 1 of the books was an audiobook, so I don't have that, but I'll show it up on the screen here. So the first book that I read in September was the audiobook, The Vacancy in Room 10. This was such a special book. I literally fell so in love with the characters of this book. Well, it was about 2 women. One of them has just lost her husband. He died unexpectedly. He killed himself, basically. Or so she thinks. And so she basically gets this call from him like, oh, everything's my fault, I'm sorry, and then he dies. And she's like, what? So she goes to this like hotel where he was staying, and he was staying there to like do work and paint and stuff like that. And she's trying to investigate why he killed himself or how he died. And there's this other woman who lives there at this hotel. I'm sorry, it's not a hotel. It's like an apartment turned hotel. Anyway, there's this other woman that lives there who is just out of a long-term relationship where she was hoping to marry the guy. He didn't want to marry her. He ended up cheating on her. And so she ends up at this apartment, this hotel turned apartment, and she's basically living rent-free by doing repairs for people all around the apartment. And so she's very unhappy. She starts like swindling guys for money a little bit, and like she kind of is upset and she doesn't want to live there. And you know, she had this like very glossy life before with this guy, and like now she's just on her own, and she basically is doing plumbing repairs in like this old apartment building that used to be a hotel. Actually, I lie, it used to be a motel, but whatever. Anyway, so you have these 2 women and you have their 2 perspectives, and they're both here at this apartment complex. And the apartment complex is very run down. You know, I'm Hispanic, so from what I would assume, there's a lot of Hispanic people living there just from the way she describes the people that live there. And if you listen to the audiobook, there's like, I feel like she's got some accents that are like trying to be Hispanic, and I sort of love it. So essentially, they're kind of like working together. They don't really want to work together, I don't think, but they eventually try to work together to figure out what the heck happened to this guy that died. All the while, the one girl that left her ex, she gets in trouble with this drug lord that is living in the apartment complex, and she is trying to basically save herself from this dilemma with this drug lord. And there's this other guy that lives there, Callum, and he ends up helping her. And the girl who's looking for her husband is like trying to get Callum to help her find her husband. And it's just like a lot going on. This book was really good. I gave it 5 stars. I honestly like would read it again. There's something about the characters in this story that just like kept me going. I just felt like they were very real and funny. Like the dialogue was really good. I felt like the women, like I said, were Hispanic, and I feel like the author really captured that Hispanic culture of like joking around, and I just really enjoyed it, and I kind of like missed the characters after it was over. So I highly recommend giving this one a read. The audiobook has its own fun attached to it. I don't know if you'll have as much fun without listening to the audiobook. So that's my recommendation. If you're gonna read it, listen to it. Really, really good book. It was by Serafina Nova Glass. I really, really enjoyed it. So the second book I read in September was called Hidden Pictures. I don't know how to say this guy's last name. I think it's Rekulak? Jason Rekulak. This book was so good. Another 5-star read. It is a thriller with pictures in it, okay? This book is about a young woman named Mallory Quinn. She is a recovering addict, and she gets this job babysitting through her sponsor. She's really excited about it. She doesn't want to mess it up. The couple that hires her is a little bit nervous about hiring her, the dad especially, because she's a recovering addict, but they end up taking a chance on her, and it's all going really well, except their little boy keeps drawing pictures of this woman that basically looks like she comes from the Ring movie. All the pictures that he starts initially drawing are very nice, and they look like traditional little kid pictures, but one day he just draws pictures that look like this. Can you see that? Hopefully you can see. Yeah. Little creepy, right? And what I liked about this book too is that, like, as the book goes on, she's like discovering these pictures the same time we are. So I feel like we are her, we are Mallory. And that is something that's very immersive in a book, and I've never experienced that. So as the book goes on, she starts to realize that something is very wrong with Teddy. Teddy is the little boy that she's being asked to watch. He does these very strange things where he draws for hours, he talks to his imaginary friend, Anya, and the mom is like, oh no, he just is an imaginary friend, it's fine, it's perfectly normal. And we all know, you know, it's not. I mean, it is, but it could be. But there's something, when it's in a horror book or a horror movie, that imaginary friend is probably some spirit or demon. So essentially, she goes on the hunt to figure out what the heck this kid is drawing. And he's drawing a woman, and the pictures get progressively worse. So first, you know, he's drawing this like creepy woman, and then he's drawing this woman getting dragged by her legs. And the drawings get more and more sophisticated to the point where it's like, they look real. Like, they like, look at this. This is a real picture of like a hot air balloon. Like, that is like, that's a real thing. That's not something that a little kid does. And then they get really real. Like, a man is dragging this woman and like burying her, and it gets real fast. Essentially, she goes through and tries to figure out like, what is going on here? Of course, she brings this up to the parents, but they just blame it on, like, you know, the fairy tales, the Grimm's fairy tales that the father is reading the kid, and they don't really believe her. They actually believe that she is doing the drawings because she's an addict and she's got these false memories. It's pretty terrible. But they very much doubt what's going on here. But they also start to plant in the reader's head, like, maybe she is drawing it. I don't know, like, she could be an unreliable narrator. We don't know what's going on. She ends up working with, the main girl, Mallory, ends up working with this gardener who's like around her age and very handsome, who lives down the street to like solve what the heck is going on with this kid. And I have to tell you, at the end, there is such a big twist that you just don't see coming. I did not see that coming. I was like, what? Like, it was just one of those head spinners, like, what is happening here? And then once you know, you just have like a million questions. You know, you just did not see that coming. I will tell you, when I was reading this book, that I got chills. I couldn't read it at night. I was scared. It has, like, you know, some supernatural elements into it, and it just, I get scared with this stuff. You know, like The Ring, like if you like The Ring, that kind of like vibe, you will find this scary. So I highly recommend this if you like horror and thrillers, because as she's trying to figure out what the heck is going on, she puts all the drawings out on the floor, and like they put it in order in the book, so you can also look at the drawings and try to make sense of what this kid is trying to say, what this imaginary friend is trying to tell the world. So very, very good book. 5 stars. Highly recommend reading in the daytime, very freaky. And yeah, stay away from the nighttime with this one. You don't want to read this one at night, not good. Oh my gosh, the next book that I read. Okay, can we just have a moment for S.A. Cosby? Can we just have a moment with this book? Oh my God. So I first heard about this book, Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, through Danny Reeds, another booktuber that I follow. She had so much to say about this book that was good that I was like, instantly I had to get it. And this book just, it reads like a movie. It reminds me of like the old days when I was younger. I was reading like Stephen King, Dean Koontz and all them. It reminds me of that kind of writing where it was like kind of dirty and adult. And I really had no business reading those books when I was younger, but I did, and it just was reminiscent of that. So basically, I'll give you the premise. This is about two men who lost their sons, and their sons were gay. And now the fathers are trying to figure out what happened to them. But it's great because one guy is black and one guy is white. So you have this like race dynamic going on there. And then you have the dynamic of the fact that like they didn't accept their sons who were gay, and then their sons died. And then it was like they had to work together, the two men, to figure out what happened to their sons. But it was like there's always this like conflict because you had the white guy who was like saying some super racist stuff, and then you had the black guy that was like calling him out on it. And it was just like, it was a very interesting play between them. The dialogue was so good, but it was just, it felt like a movie that was like also like a commentary and like, but like an action movie. And like I probably am not doing it justice, but it was so good because they basically go on the hunt to figure out who killed their sons. And of course, and they're two also, I should mention, they're ex-cons as well. So they are very willing, able, and capable of doing some pretty gnarly stuff to people. So they end up, of course, coming across this like bicycle gang, and like they end up like torturing people and like all this stuff. And at the end, you figure out obviously who was behind the killing. And I will say I was very proud of myself because I want to say about halfway through the book, I was like, I feel like I know who it was. And I was right. So it's always satisfying to know that you were right in guessing the killer. But that still made this, it was still a very good book, even though I kind of guessed it, but I wasn't sure. And I have to say, if you are looking for a book to just be in love with, this is for you. This really is for you. It's a very good book. I listened to the audio as well because I had some stuff to do and I couldn't put this down. So I got it on Libby, and it was such a good audiobook. The narrator was amazing. And I'm telling you, it was like a movie. And the guy in here, one of the dads, Buddy Lee Jenkins, he was just so funny. His character was like, every time he spoke, I was laughing. S.A. Cosby knows how to write good dialogue, and he really crafts a character so well that like the character is so believable. And this guy used so many similes. Like when I tell you this guy knows how to use a simile, like I underlined so many good descriptive phrases that he had in here, like a cough seized his chest like the pincers of a blue crab. The words shot out of her mouth like shrapnel. This was a really funny line from Buddy Lee Jenkins. I think if I hiccup too hard, I'm gonna pass out. 4 walking appliances in black blazers came down the steps of the mansion. Like, walking appliances, I just love that. The air around them was charged like a thunderstorm was approaching. He has such a way with words that you could feel it, you could see it, you could taste it, you could smell it. It just is like, he's amazing. So I recommend you get your hands on this book, and I will be reading a lot more S.A. Cosby after this. The 4th and final book that I read in September was The Quiet Tenant by Clemence Michelin. I hope I'm saying that last name right. This was such a good book. It was about a young woman who was held captive for 5 years in a shed with no windows. And every night, the guy who was holding her captive would come feed her, rape her, and then leave her alone the whole day. He would let her like wipe herself down with a towel, but for like 5 years in a shed with no windows, he basically would just leave her there as like a sex toy and just kind of like feed her, and leave. It was a very disturbing thing. And he also would bring her like stuff that he would take from other women that he killed. So he was a serial killer. He decided to keep her for himself for whatever reason. But he was a serial killer. He would go off and kill women, but like he would come back and bring her, his prisoner, his like the women that he killed, possessions from the women that he killed. And it was very disturbing. And we get her side of the story, the prisoner. And we also get the side of the story of the serial killer's daughter, who lives in the house and has no idea that her father is hiding a woman in the shed. And we also get the perspective of a third woman who actually has a crush on this man. And she works at a restaurant down the street. And he comes to her restaurant / bar every Thursday and orders a cherry Coke. And like, she's in love with him. And so unbeknownst to her, he's a serial killer. And then throughout the book, we also get the backstories of like the different women who died, which was interesting too, that he killed. So we kind of learn about this guy throughout the story through the perspective of all these different women. And it's very interesting. So what happens in this book is obviously the woman is held captive, but eventually this guy has to move. Like, he's married, his wife dies, and he's got to move. And he's most likely planning on killing this prisoner, but she convinces him to take her with him to this new house where he's moving. And things just get a little tense from there on out. Essentially, he has to introduce this woman as a roommate that he's letting sublet his house, like a room in his house, to his daughter, who's like 13. So can you imagine this woman who has been in a shed for 5 years is now living in this house, kind of free, but at night, not really. She's handcuffed to the bed, but like she's talking to his daughter every night at dinner, you know, and like, essentially she's like, oh my God, like, you know, trapped, but like visible to other people, but like trapped. It's a very strange feeling. And, you know, essentially, obviously she's plotting her escape. And it is just like the most tense and sad thing, because it's such a tragic thing for people to be held captive. And then just kind of like, I don't know, I just, throughout this whole book, I was just like, I was nervous, you know, and all the times when like she was considering escaping. And like, I remember I was reading this book. I also listened to it too on the audiobook, because I always like to read and listen. And I was on my walking pad and I was listening to it, and I was just getting stressed out. I was just like walking and I was like, oh my God. I was just like getting stressed out. I get stressed out thinking about it. And this was such a good book. I highly recommend reading it if you want something that's a little tense. It is somewhat fast-paced, but it was very good from start to finish. I love the characters. I love the story. I was nervous. I was angry. It gave me all the feels. So Quiet Tenant, definitely check it out. This is her first novel, I believe. So sensational debut, I might say. So those were the books I read in September. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll pick up one or all of them. I did link them below in the description, and I hope you'll follow me on Instagram and all the places, and let me know if you've read these books or if you plan to read these books. They were all so good. It was such a good reading month, you guys. And like and subscribe if you like this content. I will see you next time. Bye.